Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Knock
Thank you
it out.
for joining us today. Would like to introduce Jim from IHS, who's going to talk about how they use AppDynamics to build a link to DevOps. Thank you very much.
You bet. So I'll give everybody a second here to grab a seat. So how y'all doing today? Are you enjoying the conference? How many people have been here before for the past few years? Yeah, I know you've been here a couple times. So thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. Basically, I spoke last year. My speech last year was about using AppDynamics to basically smoke jump and troubleshoot complex applications, and how IHS implemented that into some of our core applications in order to resolve issues quickly. So not avoid downtime, get down to the root cause pretty quickly, all of that. This is kind of a continuation of that. We started implementing AppDy about 2 years ago. We implemented it quickly over a weekend shot with one of our applications that was having issues. By the time we installed all the agents and all that, it was no more than 24 hours later that we pretty much found the root cause to the problem. So it's kind of the start to our journey here with AppDynamics. And like I said, I'm Jim Waldron. I'm the Principal Global Application Support Engineer at IHS Markit now. It's not my title anymore. As of last Thursday, I'm actually a Senior Manager for one of our automotive application platforms. So title's changed, the job's going to change a little bit. My role with the AppDynamics stuff will be more of a, I think, an observer at this point in time, but we've implemented it so well that our team really utilizes it to the T. Not only our operations side, but our development side as well, to actually test their code before they put it out into production. They do a really good job with testing it, finding out with AppD what's going on with it, and then releasing good code into production. So I've been in the field, actually it should be 28 years now. I missed a couple years there. They flew by pretty quickly. I've done everything from small .coms, doing app support, probably for the past 10 years or so, for different companies around Denver. I did a little contract gig for a while myself, which was lucrative for quite a few years. But I settled into IHS about 3 years ago as a senior application support engineer, one in Inglewood, the first one they hired in Inglewood. And from there, built a team of about, I don't know, we got about 26 people now, I think close to 30 globally. So my degree's in history, not in IT. I figured out pretty quickly that history wasn't going to pay the bills, and I promised my dad before he passed away back then I wouldn't be a teacher because he said I'd be poor the rest of my life. So I enrolled in University of Colorado, Denver. That was back in about 94. I took one CMS MIS course. I picked a job off a job board as an internship. The people that hired me, the manager quit 2 weeks after I started, and then the other admin that was there quit 2 weeks later, so I was the only guy. Had to learn very quickly to, dig through logs and read man pages and all that. It's pre-Google. I hear a lot of people say, you can figure it out on Google. That's one of the interview questions that I have when I hear that. It's usually a check mark no. I think you really have to understand the systems before you should use them. But I've kind of been a smoke jumper throughout my career, except for it, I guess, and at IHS. But for IHS over the past 3 years, it's been more of a analyze and resolve issues role. I used to jump in, dig through logs, find the issue, jump out. And once they resolved the issue, then that contract was over and I'd move on to another job. I don't think there's any better way to learn than baptism by fire. I think that formal training with school and all that's really good, but I think the technology is a couple years behind. So when you actually get your first real job, you're still kind of a couple years behind, depending on where to go to school anyway. So getting that education through just sort of like I did, where you only had a couple weeks to learn with somebody who knew about it. and then had to learn it yourself. It really helps out. And I'm more of a Unix, Linux person than I am a .NET Windows guy. But with AppD, I've been forced to kind of go down that route too. Our applications at IS are kind of split evenly between Java and .NET. And I'm lucky because I think this is the only job that I've kind of found me. I didn't find it, and it's been just a joyride over the past 28 years to do this kind of work. It's a long thing about IHS market. I'll let you guys read that, but essentially what we are is we serve up data for a whole bunch of industries. We're a big data company. Our industries fall into automotive, chemical, aerospace and defense, maritime, and we kind of go way beyond that as far as serving up data for our customers goes. So we're going to kind of start off with the initial move to DevOps. It wasn't easy. When I got there and throughout my career, I've had to kind of integrate myself into different situations with different teams. Being on the app support side, we're the ones who called first. Everybody calls us to fix it. We get a ticket that comes in or a customer that's complaining goes to the IOC, comes to us. We take a look at the problem, try to bring it back up as quickly as we can. If not, call in other individuals to help us out. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But the key thing is that we do this by building relationships with other teams and things like that. That's what I've had to do over the course of my career, is actually start developing those relationships with dev teams and understand the business side, and then come in and take care of the application side for us. What is DevOps? Well, what is DevOps? Anybody want to give me an example or give me a definition of what you feel that DevOps is? Yeah, there's probably 270,000 actually. So really what I see DevOps is dev and ops integrating together, not only to resolve issues when we hit that point, but to work together to put out the best possible application that we can for our customers. And our customers are a wide variety of folks. We've got the business side who are our customers. We've got our true customers that are out there actually paying for our applications. DevOps means something different to development at times. It means different things to ops at the time. But the true definition, in my real opinion, is that those two merge together to put out that best application that they possibly can. There's my true definition of DevOps. I'll let you guys go ahead and read that. I kind of simplified it just a second ago, but it's really the example that I threw together that I feel like makes the most sense. So the way it used to be at IHS, when I first got there, we would do releases, or we would support applications, where we would get the IOC calling us. For instance, our access control, our front door, that application was a huge scale architecture-wise, huge scale code-wise. We had a lot of issues with it. We would get a call in from the IOC. We would work together to fix it. When we couldn't fix it, we'd bring dev in to help us out. And we'd resolve the issue, but never really found out the true problem of what that issue was. It affected us in a lot of ways. Customer impact, revenue, time in general, just the amount of time that it would take us to diagnose and figure out what's wrong with it to bring it back up, and then work towards resolving the issue with not much real valid data. These issues would lead into war rooms. Everybody on the call, all hands on the call. Try to figure out which teams we needed to get involved. Is it a network issue? Is it truly a code issue? Do we have a database issue? And it led to a lot of finger pointing pre-AppD. We would get on these calls and literally it would be, well, it's not our fault. Everything on our side looks green, or we're sitting here talking to the network team. They get blamed for everything originally anyway, but wouldn't be their fault, and we couldn't really, on that call, all kind of communicate together to try to get to the common good, which was not only resolve the issue, but fix it, truly fix it. We'd bring the product or the application back up, but it led into multiple outages for the same issue, essentially. So we would take what we would find. Sometimes in access control, it would take us a few days to get through the logs, all the different sets that we have them to actually find a problem. We would pass that information back to the development teams. And without, I guess, valid data, like AppD delivers to us with their APM, without that valid data, it was kind of up in the air whether that's truly the issue or not. We had issues with, well, we'll fix that in the next release. It's not really a code issue, even though you're showing us it's a code issue. Digging through those logs, it's good data. We considered it to be good data. We considered it to be the root cause, but not necessarily be able to tell the development team that or convince them that that's actually the problem. And some attitudes and some, I guess history kind of gets in that way too. So, each team is set with a group of individuals who are professionals and actually really know their stuff. But sometimes you can get into that, we're the smart guy. It's not our problem, but it is your problem. And we try to go down that path, and it just creates a lot of turmoil. So back to it again. I mean, we resolve the issue, but when the issue rears its ugly head again, we've got customers who are consistently unhappy with our application that we've got out there that's not working. And I love that picture, though. So once we get it back up, they're happy, but we still have that same original problem where it's not necessarily, a code problem or a network problem or whatever the original root cause is to the issue. So we would bring the application back up. The dev teams would go on to their next release and start doing their enhancements and features, which is what they really are trying to do for the customer to make that product better. But we still have a problem with code, or we still have a problem with something in the application that's causing us to break down. And that's the key. Is it really fixed? It's not really fixed if we're not actually fixing the problem. The code, if that's the problem, needs to be fixed in that communication between both sides. If it's not there, it's really difficult to actually say, we fixed the problem. Services are back up, but we run through the same problem over and over and over again. So what we kind of noticed pre-AppD was we have built those relationships with the development teams little by little. That trust gets built with little things. We started with doing the releases for the development team. That led into, you guys are doing this pretty well. We can kind of hand that off to you. What can we do next to help you guys out to get your job done? By building that relationship, that initial relationship, gain that little bit of trust. And prior to AppD, it kind of went pretty far for us. We had the trust with the dev teams. They trusted us on the app side, but we still quite weren't there. We didn't really have that true, valid data to bring back to the dev teams in order to show them that we've got a code issue. So there was a missing link to our DevOps process. And we spent some time trying to figure out what that missing link was. So some of the things that we noticed when I got there, we noticed that culture is a barrier. It can either be a catalyst or a barrier. But for me, it seemed like more of a barrier. It seemed like before I got there, the trust issues were so big that they almost seemed insurmountable. I didn't think we were going to get past that. Like I said, when we started with just doing the releases for these guys and taking on little bits and pieces of things that they could allow us to do, that started to help us build that trust and kind of knock down that culture. IHS is a 55-year-old company. We've got people who've been there 30 plus years. Some are developers, some are database guys. They know the old company, and they've been watching it merge into a new company, and it becomes confusing for them. Those old mindsets and those old theories from 30 years ago can kind of get in the way to bring in, more progress, to be more progressive and more proactive about how we want to go about resolving issues. So the definition of culture is up there. IHS's definition of culture, it's a mixed bag there. We're a global company, United States, UK, Bangalore. We've got some folks in Asia. So it's a mixed group of folks over there that all really at this point kind of work pretty well together. In saying that, culture brings with it a lot of different pieces to it that actually define kind of what's going on with the different teams and how those relationships were built. So there's attitudes, customs, beliefs, language, rituals, and institution. Like I said, we were a 55-year-old company. All these things kind of rolled up into one, really kind of define what it's like in any environment, I think. Whether you're a small company or a big company, you're a mixed bag of people that have to try to come to a common good, roll up your ideas, your thoughts, your theories, and get those into place in order to put out the best product that you possibly can. So, catalyst to achieving DevOps, you got to put your attitudes and your cultures aside. You have to really implement good communication amongst the teams. I think that's a key kind of part of not only gaining that trust, but getting to understand who your customer is and how you're dealing with those customers. What are their needs? What are their ideas? How do we take all of those, merge them into one, and put out the best product that we possibly can, application that we can. And we certainly can't do it alone. I know we can't do it at IHS alone, but I don't think anybody at any company can do it alone. You guys all have to kind of come together to get to the common good. And it's not easy. There aren't any right answers. There's different ways to go about resolving issues. Once again, I think communication plays a part in that. You shouldn't be dead set against one way or the other. I think you need to sit and talk about it. I think you need to hash those kind of things out in a room and get everybody who's supposed to be involved in it to, get to the resolution of the problem. And communication will be, will be an issue as the journey begins. So the key thing here is we got to the point where we started doing the releases for these guys. We implemented AppDynamics. Once we implemented AppDynamics, our issues that we had with applications and resolving those applications on outages and things like that came to a quick, sudden resolution. It was fast. The data that we got out of it was valid. And we were able to work with development at that point too, to have them implement it into their release process and all of that in order to test it and let it burn into a stage long before it hit production. And once it hit production, we knew we had good, quality code. But taking that information and that data that we got from AppD back to the development teams made that trust bond even greater. But we weren't quite done there yet. AppD out of the box is really good at quickly finding issues. It's really good out of the box, allowing an operations support team to be on a call with the IOC, take a look at what's going on with the whole environment, find that node or find those tiers that are having issues, find out if it's a database problem, dig down to see if it's a code problem. But that's not all where it's all about. The business transactions and stuff like that, we might not necessarily understand. the key thing about AppD Professional Services is they kind of bridge that gap in between. We found out with a couple different teams that we merged with to do to implement AppDynamics into. We found out with these teams that once we actually hired or got the professional services and had AppD bring their consultants in, that 2 days worth of data that we were analyzing and pulling through and pouring through to try to get their valid business transactions, everything that the dev team wanted to look at, the dashboards that were being built, everything that they put together, both teams were involved in. It was the dev team and it was the operations team. For instance, at IHS, we have business lines that we're broken out into. We have 3 operations folks, 3 engineers or application engineers in each of those lines. And those guys were involved actually with the engineers at AppD and with those business enablement services. We're able to see how the AppD consultants work with the developers to see what data is valid. They were also able to help to build the dashboards and create something that's meaningful and useful to not only the development teams, but the application support teams as well. I think the key thing there is that services can make data the key and remove the emotion. We get wrapped up in emotions when we start pointing fingers and things like that. I spent probably the first 6 months or so doing a lot of finger pointing, being up at 2 o'clock in the morning with 10 different people on a call grumbling because they're up at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out what's going on. Listening to one team say it's not me, application support saying I don't really care if it's you or you, we just need to fix the issue. And really, what AppD brings to the table is the fact that the data you're pulling when that outage is there is valid data that you can carry to development teams, network teams, database teams, and say, here's where we have the issue. Same slide, sorry guys. So here's an example. Just recently, our maritime team has been doing a complete rewrite of the application. It's been daunting for them. It's a huge set of different moving pieces. They track shipping, literal ships out in the ocean. They've got all sorts of different kinds of data and different kinds of customers that they pinpoint and pull information for. The maritime team, with their rewrite, decided to implement AppDynamics into their C-Web product. Now, their initial environment's not that big, but that's not really the point. It's a matter of everything that's involved behind that architecture, all those data points behind that architecture. When we pulled them in, or when they actually inquired about wanting to get AppD installed, we went ahead and we enabled it. We took a couple days just as the app support team to do the agents and things like that. The immediate reaction we got from one of them is, wow, this is fantastic. It's actually data that we can see. We can see already 4 or 5 things where we're having problems with, which they fixed shortly after that, 2 days after that or so. But there needed to be more. I don't think they necessarily understood their business transactions. I think the ones login, all that kind of stuff, that was of interest to them, was there and ready for them, but they wanted to dig deeper. So we went ahead and we enabled, or we got AppDynamics to bring in their enablement services folks, and we got a dedicated engineer on the call for 2 days. I think it was 3 days, actually. We used 3 full days to make sure that everything that was coming through, all the business transactions that were coming through, all the valid data points that the maritime team identified and wanted to see were built, configured, and implemented properly with these guys. Those 3 days worth of time, our app engineers spent that time with them too and learned a whole bunch. I mean, it's one thing to sit there and just jockey and go out and fix issues. I know in my early career, I really, really loved to just sit there and chase, the thrill of what's going on, to be able to dig through logs and try to figure out on the call what's going on. And you kind of get that hero syndrome going a little bit. And I really did kind of like that. But post-AppD, I don't have to do that anymore. It's actually kind of a really nice feeling. It enables me to, and our team to, not have to waste so much time on, going through logs and tracking down those issues and all of that. But with the enablement services and within those 3 days, it actually enabled our app support team to be able to understand the business transactions, understand the environments that these guys are building. It gives them an excellent view into the application so that when they're actually working an issue on it, they actually know it. They know it from top down, and right back up. They know all pieces of it. They know how it's working out. They know everything that it touches. And when it comes right down to it, it's that huge amount of data that gets collected into AppD that allows us to, on that next call, go, I understand this application. I have a history behind it. I know kind of what's going on with it. I can pinpoint it down to, with AppD's help, but pinpoint it down to, it's on this node. It's a piece of code that's running on this node. I can send that piece of code back to development, and it becomes valid. There's no more speculation to it. There's absolutely no more guessing games, that are out there. And what it really pulls out, the thing that the AppD enablement services do is really bridge that gap of trust between the two teams. It makes a huge difference. We did a lot of this stuff on our own. We still have some applications out there that we'd like to throw AppD onto. We still have AppD on some that we'd like to do enablement services with to make it, better than it is right now. But their professional services are absolutely fantastic in helping to bridge that gap. It becomes a real partnership, not only between AppD, but between all the teams involved, Dev and Ops, and it gets you right to that true word, DevOps. So by going through their professional services too, we know that we've tuned that application to the T. We know that we know every piece of that application, and we know that the data that we've sent back to the dev teams, they've fixed their issues prior to going to production, and we don't have as many, re-releases, patches, bug fixes. We got a few teams out there that used to do things on the fly. We've gotten away from all of that at IHS, and it has improved our customer delight. We have this thing called Customer Delight where we send out surveys to our customers every year. About 80% of them fill it out. I think when I got there, it was somewhere in the low 70s, and now we're up to about 74 or 75%, which is 2 or 3 points higher every year. And that's really what it's all about. It's about providing services and providing applications to our customers that actually work. They're up, they're running, very little downtime. Development's working towards the enhancements and features because we're not spending as much time, fighting in war rooms about what's going on, fighting in war rooms about whose problem it is or whose issue it is. So with professional services, it builds that bond between all the teams. It really has helped us out at IHS really has helped us out at IHS with in regards to all of us. I think Todd Rolls is in the room today. He's one of our developers. I think he put it yesterday at breakfast. Yeah, I think he put it best yesterday at breakfast when we were all sitting there, and Mike Risick sitting next to him, another one of my engineers. Mike and Todd were talking about DevOps. And Todd said, well, I can't remember what Mike said, but Todd said, but you're really a part of our team. We really have integrated you as an app support engineer into our team. It's true DevOps, you know. We've gotten and built that trust through these professional services and by using AppD to actually build that. It was pretty, actually, I kind of felt a little bit proud yesterday when I heard that because, yeah, I know. But I felt proud yesterday when I heard that because without AppDynamics and actually without the professional services, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So, yeah.
What percentage of your DevOps team members are using AppDynamics to get information themselves?
So we have about 600 applications. I'd say we got about 17 in there now of those, but we have what we call a core top 25 applications. So we have 17 probably of the 25 in AppDynamics right now.
Your applications?
Of our applications.
And so there's a dev team or two that's supporting multiple apps?
Yes.
Each of those teams, are they all using AppD, or what percentage of those members are using the tool?
So each development team that we have out there for the 17 that are in there, all the development teams are using it pre-production to utilize, implement, and test.
The whole team?
Pretty much so, the whole team. I mean, I'll give you an example here in just a minute about that. And then the entire app support team with each business line that we have out there, each one of those engineers is educated enough with AppD to utilize it for the troubleshooting services and passing that information back down to dev.
How'd you train them all?
Well, with AppDynamics, with the licensing or the purchase of licenses that we bought, training was involved in some of that. Some of it has been a matter of, I've been to a couple more advanced trainings. We've passed some of that information down just person to person, but most of them were done through AppDynamics.
Oh.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was advantage to that and being able to, I think, build those relationships a little more one-on-one.
Yeah.
The other approach to that is a very top-down, this is the way we're doing it, and rip that Band-Aid off.
That's
and,
true.
You know, everybody's out there doing it. Out of curiosity, what do you think the advantage or disadvantage to one or the other is? It's not supposed to be a hard question.
It's not really a hard one. I'm not a big fan of taking a round peg and smacking it into a square hole. I don't think that approach, you know, makes very much sense. I don't think that doing the top-down approach where you know you're going to use this. However, in this instance, it's a little bit different. We started off with the one-on-one relationships with, you know, we're going to implement AppD into this application and we're going to expose it to the developer or developers and let them kind of take a look at it. We built that relationship starting that way. I would like to get to the point where it actually becomes a top-down. It becomes an initiative with the company to utilize AppDynamics for at least our top 25. I'd like to get it on all 600. I'm not even sure which, out of those 600, how many I've actually touched in 3 years. Some don't go down at all. But that top-down approach, I think once you build those one-on-one relationships with it and you actually show the value of AppDynamics and you show the value of the professional services that help build it to what it can be, that top-down approach just kind of becomes apparent, right? I mean, the business and the C-level folks go, hey, this application's been up and running. We haven't had any issues with it. It's time to implement this and make it company-wide. So.
Any other questions?
Sure.
I'm getting all my steps in.
So you mentioned tuning.
Yeah.
You said with the AppD Professional Services, it came in and tuned the application to the T. That's what you said. So could you expand on what that
Yeah.
meant?
So depending on what your application looks like, I mean, when we implemented AppD into access control, I think the first 200 business transactions showed up. But I don't know how many.
Thanks. And it's not like I'm not loud enough, right? But so we put AppDynamics. We had a stability issue with what he's calling access control, which is an entitlement system. So it's got a couple of APIs. We've got an API calling an API. We've got 30 or 40 customers calling into this entitlement system for session-based entitlements so that they can deliver content to their customers. And we had an issue. We were going down quite a bit. And the standard operation, he was alluding to it earlier, was we get on a call, there'd be 30, 40 people on a call. Well, what the hell's going on? It's access control. Okay, reboot it.
Which was the answer all
And
the
that
time.
was the fix, right?
Yeah.
So, which is the problem. So we put AppDynamics on our dev environment, our test environment, our stage environment, and the production environment. We started watching. And then we've got a couple of really good engineers on the team. We started looking at where we had these really problematic calls coming through. And AppD gave us insight into this thing that we had no idea we could get. So we could see from the call stack, the exit points, where problems existed. We could go in and we could tune. So we rewrote a ton of code, especially in our .NET API.
Yeah.
We also rewrote some code at the data tier to make things actually be more stable. So we've been at 3.9 now for, 8 months?
Yeah, I don't even know the last time I got a call for you guys.
Yeah, so it took us
Besides somebody
three,
who's
4
trying to-
months to make these changes, get them through, as we were also adopting a DevOps mentality, agile practices. We're using Kanban. We've got continuous integration through most of these environments now. We've got continuous delivery, essentially, at this point, so we're releasing on a weekly basis. But we're not going down. We're not having war room calls. And if anybody calls us anymore, it's like, hey, can you fix or extend this thing for us? So it's been really eye-opening for us all the way through. But that's how we did it.
So that was a piece of the tuning that Todd's talking about on the development end.
Sure.
So in the enablement services, though, say with Maritime and the other applications that we put in, with the enablement services, with the professional services, so Maritime had, I guess we're limited to the first 200 with the SaaS controller that we're on. Everything else falls into that all other traffic bucket. Maybe, what's that? Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm trying to say. So this is where my definition of tuning comes in, is here with their services. So we've got those first 200. We take a look at them. Maybe 10 of them are, up in the 200 count, for how many times they're getting called on or whatever. A lot of them were in the 0 counts or 1s. So, we went through and took a look at what those were, and you can, you can sit there and you can take those and exclude them. But then we went into the all other traffic bucket, and that's where the Maritime folks probably found the most value out of it. A lot of their transactions were being spilled into that bucket. And me, as being an app support guy, not really knowing the code or the application all that well, could go into that bucket and I have no idea what they are. But the professional services allow the developers to work with them to go into that bucket and find those valid transactions for them. So that's what I mean as far as tuning those business transactions go. So I should have been more clear on that.
Jim, I'll just jump in on that as well. I think one of the challenges, just knowing IHS on both sides of the business, from development as well as the operational side, and it's probably pretty common across most organizations, and that's really simply that they don't speak the same language, right? So you've got developers that recognize those key transactions.
Yeah.
And then you've got an operations group that is looking in here. If they're the ones setting up those BT consolidations, setting up the parent-child relationships, all those sorts of things, the challenge then becomes, are they picking the right ones? Because the developers have the skill and the knowledge and the architecture of that application to probably pinpoint more of what's going to be of value.
Yeah.
And so by having the services come in on this particular instance, it's that ability to have the conversation with both sides, to pull out kind of what's fluff. Let's face it, when you're talking to a group of developers, everything's going to be the operations phone, right? So let's make sure we're pulling out the right data, the valid data, what do they truly and honestly need? But then also go back and have that exact same conversation with the operations side.
Yeah.
Who's going to say the code's always crap, right?
Yeah,
And then say, what are we going to do, and how do we, so
Yeah.
it's, again, bridging the conversation, I think, is really the
bridging that conversation. Dev's concerned with, card transaction and things like that, right? What's generating revenue? I'm concerned with why can't people log in? I'm concerned with why when you released that last release, everything's fine except for this piece of the application. So that all gets kind of sorted out within that whole enablement services. So, are there any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.